tonight. Government forms 3 committees to tackle coronavirus threat. 65 people suspected to have coronavirus symptoms quarantined in Zanzibar. And in sports, Alphonse Felix Simbu to set up camp in Kenya in preparation of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics despite coronavirus threat. Good evening, this is Capital News at 9:30. My name is Khadija Zimbwe. First, the national news. The government has created 3 committees to deal with the coronavirus threat, to be led by Prime Minister Kassim Majaliwa, and will incorporate ministers, permanent secretaries and the government spokesperson. The other 2 committees will be under the Chief Secretary and the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Health, Community Development, Gender, the Elderly and Children.
Waheshimiwa mawaziri na makatibu wakuu, sasa tujue kwamba tuko kwenye ile vita yenyewe ya ugonjwa huu. Kazi yetu kubwa ni kuzuia.
We've now entered into a war against corona. Our greatest task is to prevent further spread, preventing this illness from infecting the country to a great extent. When we talk about protection, it means that we must also protect government operations so they can carry on and other issues too. So my instructions today to you is for ministers, 75% of our ministerial duties is to work towards fighting the spread of the coronavirus. Project tours must be done by Secretary Generals or directors when it is necessary. So we focus our attention in preventing the virus from spreading across the country. We must hold regular meetings so we can evaluate on work done in order to be sure that we are protecting our country. Nonetheless, we are grateful that the Almighty God is still protecting us. I commend the media. Once the first case had been reported, they worked so hard in educating the general public.
Habari njema, hadi leo asubuhi Mheshimiwa Waziri Mkuu, wagonjwa wote, na tunaogopa kutumia neno wagonjwa kwa sababu wote hali zao ni nzuri.
Until this morning, all patients are doing well. There is no critical cases. We took a sample from Isabella a couple of days back and she tested negative. We took another sample for testing today and it also came back negative. We shall take another sample later today so we can check the 3rd time, and if it comes back negative, it means she is recovered. Today morning, we tested 12 samples and all have come back negative.
Zote ni negative.
The Minister of Health in Zanzibar, Hamad Rashid, has said that the government has quarantined 65 people, who include government leaders and 6 health officials, for further tests on the coronavirus.
Iliyoathirika na hata kama ni Mzanzibari ni Mtanzania, tungekuomba ubaki huko kwa kwanza.
For all those affected, Zanzibarian or Tanzanian, we implore you to remain where you are, because if you come here, the quarantine rules are the same. We had government officials who had traveled on government business and have also been placed in isolation for 14 days. No one is exceptional.
Panda ndege za kawaida, chartered flights.
Those on chartered flights will also have to stay in isolation for 14 days. At the airport, a vehicle has already been stationed and rooms have been made available on chosen hotels for visitors, Tanzanians and Zanzibarians.
Ukipita airport, tuna gari maalum tushaiweka, tuna hoteli maalum tushazitenga kwa ajili ya wageni na kwa ajili ya Tanzania au Wazanzibari watakaokuja hapa Zanzibar.
A Tanzania company limited, ATCL, will temporarily suspend all regional flights from 25th March this year due to the entry restrictions imposed by several neighboring countries due to the coronavirus outbreak. In a press statement, the CEO of ATCL, Engineer Ladislaus Matindi, said that domestic flights will not be affected by the regional flight suspension. Water levels on the Great Ruaha River have continued to increase, caused by ongoing rains, resulting in tourist campsites to close down due to floods. Campsite owners at Ruaha National Park have said that the floods have destroyed road infrastructure and some bridges.
Well, because Ruaha is now becoming more famous, so wageni naongeza, kampi ndani ya Ruaha naongeza. So we have more wageni to look after now, and so it's important that we dedicate effort to the infrastructure of the park, so that even when these very bad, unusual rainy seasons come, that we can still operate Muzuri with the wageni, and to provide the game drive experience and the walking safari experience. Even now we have to close the camp because we cannot get the wageni or supplies. For this river to behave like this, it can happen, but maybe mara moja kila miaka 20. Lakini siku hizi pamoja na climate change, mvua naongeza.
As you can see, it's all flooded everywhere. So a lot of flooding into, we've had damage into the rooms, into the verandas, up to 0.5 meter into the rooms. Yeah, it's a difficult situation, but why this happens, of course, we don't know, and when it's going to happen again, we don't know. It was, I think, 1998 last time. So is it another 20 years, or is this global warming going to give us a few more problems, and it's going to be a regular occurrence? Yeah, the situation is we can't forecast anymore. We used to be able to know exactly when the rain was coming and have the feeling of what was going to happen. We can't do that anymore. Last year was very, very dry. At this time of year, the river was almost nothing. It was very, very low. Throughout the year, it never rose.
Now, 3 members of parliament and 24 members from opposition Chadema party and Mayor of Ubungo Boniface Jacob have appeared in Kisutu Resident Magistrate Court in Dar es Salaam to face 7 charges against them, which include damaging the entrance gate at Sigiriya Prison. The members of parliament are Halima Mdee, MP of Kawe, Esther Bulaya, MP of Bunda Alban, and Jessica Kishoa, Special State Member of Parliament. The accused are being charged for allegedly violating a directive to leave Sigiriya Prison premises on 13th March 2020. Executives in Arusha region have allocated areas to be used to quarantine visitors for 14 days at their own coast. The move comes a day after President Dr. John Magufuli issued the directive, which aims to address the coronavirus outbreak.
I cannot mention each by name, but they will be housed in these areas as of today for 14 days. A few days ago, we had a meeting with stakeholders who have helped us with some items, although there is still a need. Those who donate food items should do so, knowing we have a duty to offer help during this time. In some communities, there is still a need for education on the virus and how it is spread, but there is a lack of equipment. But those in quarantine also rely on the government for food. There are certain clans with at least 500 people. What happens if there is an infection?
The chairman of opposition Chadema Party, Freeman Mbowe, has announced cancellation of public rallies which were planned to start on April 4th this year due to the coronavirus outbreak. Now speaking at a press conference in Dodoma, the Chadema leader called on the government to increase the budget to deal with the coronavirus threat.
Tutairisha shughuli zetu zote hizo za mikusanyiko mikubwa ndani ya chama chetu.
We will stop all public gatherings within the party, and we will work with Tanzanians in taking every step necessary in fighting this pandemic. Coronavirus has entered our country, and it is not something to be taken lightly. I urge my fellow leaders in various levels to cooperate with surrounding communities by making sure every step necessary in fighting this, as instructed by our experts, is prioritized. It is clear that the only big center dealing with testing and fighting this virus is in Dar es Salaam. So for a country of 55 million people, there is a need for the government to come up with a special budget, as we want enough funding to be directed towards fighting this virus.
Tunataka jambo hili liwe lina maandalizi ya kutosha.
Chief Justice Professor Ibrahim Juma has directed all court leaders and other stakeholders to start using online services to conduct their responsibilities in order to avoid public gatherings being measures against the coronavirus threat.
Sisi tunadhani matumizi ya tehama ni muhimu sana. Hasa katika
The use of tehama is very important in addressing the problem of overcrowding, especially in making sure that justice is served and legal services do not stop. Despite of the various restrictions, we shall impose judicial services will continue to be made available through tehama to the people. This will include opening of cases, so we urge applicants to use robustly. Because we are faced with this illness, we shall also use video conferencing, and it is something that people will have to get used to.
Ule mfumo wetu wa kufungua kesi, wa kuendesha mashauri kwa njia ya elektroniki.
And that is the end of national news. International news follows shortly. Welcome back, and in international news. President Uhuru Kenyatta has vowed that the government will take stern action against any individual who breaches guidelines given by the Ministry of Health with regard to the COVID-19 pandemic. The president's warning comes after police broke up gatherings and ordered people idling in Eldoret town to disperse, and after the government of Kilifi Gideon, the governor of Kilifi Gideon Saburi was tested for the coronavirus. Kenya has recovered 16 coronavirus cases, and 646 people who had been in contact with them have been traced and quarantined for testing.
That have been laid out by the Ministry of Health. Most importantly, with regard to the danger posed to our population by people who flagrantly refuse to adhere to the laid down protocols. Let us be our brother's keeper, let us be our sister's keeper, and I am sure that if we do this, we shall overcome this particular pandemic.
Traders along the border between Uganda and Kenya have said they are starting to feel the effects on their business activities following a directive by President Yoweri Museveni of Uganda to close the border between the two countries.
Business is difficult. We depend on travelers from Kenya. The problem is right now everybody has hid their money because of coronavirus. Nobody knows what the future holds. I don't sell goods as how I used to sell before. We are really affected by this virus economically. We should pray to God for help. This virus is causing a lot of problems. Schools are closed. There is no business operations, as well as movement have been restricted.
And that is the end of international news. Business news follows next after the break. We'll be right back.
Watch Business Edition as we talk to business leaders and experts in sectors that are transforming Tanzania's economy.
We believe that the driver is the customer.
To change the mindset of traditional HR to the digitalization.
Make sure that everybody can get some access to financial services.
And once we understand the vision of our leaders, we then need to be behind them and help them in achieving that vision.
Business have involved mercantile operations, trade guilds, shared agricultural production, infrastructure, construction, financial sectors, tourism, and mining. Business Edition on Friday at 8:15 p.m.
Welcome back. And in business news, the government has removed the $1,500 fee and several conditions for registering vehicles imposed on local investors so as to attract more companies to invest in national parks. Previously, TARA procedures required an investor to pay a fee of $2,000 for company registration. Right now, we have cancelled those requirements where one can get a license for $500. The move has given us new hope of supporting our fellows who have been employed in these companies. However, the government has shown high level of patriotism to its citizens. Construction of 4 buildings for a leather manufacturing factory at Karanga Prison in Moshi District, Kilimanjaro region, constructed by the government at a cost of 9 billion shillings, is expected to be completed in April and start production in May this year.
Cutting and stitching.
The first building will be used for cutting and stitching, where the machines have arrived already. What is remaining right now is painting the building and window fittings. In short, construction of this factory have been completed by 80%. This factory will be the largest in East Africa, with vast employment opportunities. There is no need for many to have professional experiences.
Some citizens from Tanzania and Uganda have said the decision by the government of Uganda to close its border with Tanzania at Mutukula has affected business activities along the border. Passenger buses and private cars are stranded at the border. We have been highly affected because many of our business relies on import and export of goods between Tanzania and Uganda. Mutukula border is closed. As drivers, this is a very big challenge because we were expecting passengers from Uganda who are traveling to Bukoba. We have buses which operate from Kampala to Mwanza and Dar es Salaam regions, where all those buses have suspended their routes because passengers are not allowed to enter Uganda. And that is the end of business news. Sports news follows next.
Away first time, good start from Bolt. Bolt leading a moment and going away. Gay trying to go with him, and he's being dragged through to second place, but he's going to win it by 2 meters. Away first time, good start from Bolt. Bolt leading a moment and going away. Gay trying to go with him, and he's being dragged through to second place, but he's going to win it by 2 meters. Joaquinho, he did lose some length.
Welcome back, and in business news tonight, Alphonse Felix Simbu will set camp in Kenya as he prepares for the Tokyo 2020 Olympics despite fears of the spread of coronavirus.
Sisi tumeshalipa pesa zaidi ya milioni 7.
We have already paid more than 7 million to Itenyi, Kenya for our athletes who have qualified in the ranks, who are Alphonse Felix Simbu and Failuna. Fortunately, Simbu has agreed to go unless the spread of this virus gets worse, but he has already left for his training.
The East Africa Confederation of Amputee Football has postponed the CECAFA Championship, which was scheduled to start this May in Kenya due to the coronavirus outbreak.
Taratibu ambazo zilikuwa zinaendelea za kuandaa mashindano ya.
We've stopped the CECAFA preparations for the competition that was to take place in Kenya this May. We had meetings that were supposed to be proceeding in Nairobi and Kigali, Rwanda. Since the virus had spread to all these countries, we saw it fit to postpone for a while.
Now, the head of Japan Olympic Committee, JOC, said on Monday he had to consider postponing the games among his options amid increasing calls from committees around the world to delay the Olympics due to the coronavirus outbreak. Here's the story.
On Sunday, the International Olympic Committee paved the way for the Tokyo Games to be postponed after giving itself a 4-week deadline to consider its options. While the IOC has emphatically ruled out cancelling the Olympics, it said it will consider a scaled-down games as well as delaying them for a few months, or more likely a year. Today, Canada became the first country to warn that it won't send its athletes to the Tokyo Olympics unless they're postponed for a year. The Canadian Olympic Committee said holding the games as planned would threaten the health of its athletes, their families, and the broader Canadian community for athletes to continue training for these games.
The Azerbaijan Grand Prix has become the latest race to be pulled from the Formula One's coronavirus hit schedule. Here's more on the story.
Formula One's authorities had earmarked the 7th of June as a potential start date for the new season after the opening 7 Grand Prix were called off. But the event, which takes place on the streets of Azerbaijan's capital, Baku, has now been postponed because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Baku's city circuit, BCC, has today taken the decision to postpone the Formula One Azerbaijan Grand Prix 2020 due to take place on 7th of June, read a statement from race organizers.
And Manchester United and Manchester City have donated a combined £100,000, 100,000 euros rather, to local food banks in a joint initiative between the clubs to fight the threat of coronavirus to those most vulnerable.
The move comes after fans supporting food banks told The Guardian on Thursday it was launching a fund with MUFC food banks to help the 19 in the area. In a joint statement, CTN United said, "We're proud of the role our supporters play in helping local food banks and recognize the increased strain likely to be placed on these charities by the impact of coronavirus. We are pleased to come together with our fans to help vulnerable members of society in a city united." Each club will donate £50,000 to the trust, a network of over 1,200 food bank centres, including 19 in the Greater Manchester area.
And that sports item ends our news bulletin for tonight. My name is Khadija Zimbwe. Thank you for watching and good night.